I never thought my own parents would sell me out for money. But on Christmas Eve, standing in the doorway of what used to be my bedroom, watching my cousin Melissa measure the walls like she already owned the place, I realized that blood doesn't mean loyalty. It just means you bleed the same. My name is Emma, and this is the story of how I lost everything and then took it all back. It started 3 months earlier, on a Tuesday morning that felt like any other Tuesday. I was 24, working as a paralegal at a small law firm downtown, living in the house I grew up in because rent in the city was impossible and my parents said they needed help with the mortgage. I paid them $800 a month, which was more than fair considering I had the smallest bedroom and shared a bathroom with whatever relatives decided to crash for the week. But I didn't mind. It was home. The wallpaper in my room still had the faint outline where my childhood posters used to hang. The floorboard by the window still creaked when you stepped on it. At night, I could hear the old furnace kick on, the same sound that used to lull me to sleep when I was 7 years old. That Tuesday, I came home from work around 6. The house was quiet, which wasn't unusual. My dad was probably in his workshop in the garage, and my mom was likely at her book club or shopping with her sister. I dropped my bag by the door, kicked off my heels, and headed to the kitchen to scrounge up some dinner. That's when I heard the voices. They were coming from my father's study, muffled but intense. I recognized my dad's voice immediately, that low rumble he got when he was stressed. And my mom's higher pitch, strained and argumentative. I shouldn't have eavesdropped. I know that. But something in their tone made me freeze. If you're enjoying this so far, don't forget to like this video and watch till the end. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I moved closer to the study door, my heart starting to pound for reasons I couldn't explain. Through the crack where the door didn't quite close, I could see my father sitting at his desk, his head in his hands. My mother stood by the window, her arms crossed tight across her chest. "We don't have a choice," my father was saying. "The debt is real, Margaret. It's not going away." "There has to be another option," my mother replied, but her voice lacked conviction. "We can't just what? Lose the house? Because that's what's going to happen if we don't figure something out in the next 60 days. My stomach dropped. 60 days. They were talking about losing the house. "What about Emma?" my mother asked, and my ears perked up at the sound of my name. "She's been paying rent." "Can't we? $800 a month barely covers the utilities," my father interrupted. "We need real money. 20, maybe 30,000 just to catch up on what we owe." $20,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. How had things gotten this bad? Why hadn't they told me? "Melissa called again," my mother said quietly, and I felt my chest tighten. Melissa. My cousin. 28, married to a real estate developer, more money than sense, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "What did she want?" my father asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. "She's still interested in buying Emma's room. She wants to convert it into a home office for when she visits. She's offering $15,000 cash before the end of the year for tax purposes." I stopped breathing. Selling my room. To Melissa. They were actually considering it. "That's not enough to solve our problems," my father said, but he didn't say no. He didn't say it was a terrible idea. He didn't say they'd never sell their daughter's bedroom out from under her. "It's a start," my mother countered. "And Melissa said she might go higher if we include some of the furniture. The antique dresser alone is worth," that was Emma's grandmother's dresser. "Emma's grandmother is dead, Richard. And we're about to lose everything. I think Emma would understand." Would I? Would I understand my parents selling my bedroom and my grandmother's furniture to my spoiled cousin without even asking me? Would I understand being kept in the dark about financial problems so severe they were about to lose the house? I backed away from the door, my mind racing. I felt sick. Betrayed. I wanted to burst in there and demand answers, but something stopped me. Some instinct told me to wait, to listen, to find out exactly how deep this went before I revealed what I knew. I went to my room that night and lay awake until almost 3 in the morning. My room. My sanctuary. The place I'd retreated to after bad breakups and failed job interviews and every disappointment life had thrown at me. They were going to sell it. To Melissa, of all people. Melissa, who'd spent our entire childhood making sure everyone knew she had more than me. Better clothes, better grades, better everything. The next morning, I went to work like normal. I smiled at my coworkers, organized files, answered phones. But inside, I was planning. I couldn't let this happen without a fight. I needed information. I needed to understand exactly how bad things were. I started small. That weekend, while my parents were out, I went through the mail. Bills, mostly. Credit card statements with balances that made my eyes water. Past due notices from the mortgage company. A letter from the bank threatening foreclosure if payment wasn't received within 45 days. 45 days. Not 60. My father had been optimistic. I photographed everything with my phone, then carefully put it all back exactly as I'd found it. I felt like a spy in my own home, and I hated it. But I needed to know the truth. Over the next week, I did more digging. I checked public records for the house, discovered my parents had taken out a second mortgage 3 years ago. I found credit card receipts for expensive dinners, weekend trips, a new car for my mother. They'd been living beyond their means for years, and now the bill was coming due. But here's what didn't make sense: the house itself was worth at least $400,000, probably more. Even with 2 mortgages, they should have had equity. They should have had options. Selling my bedroom to my cousin for $15,000 was like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Unless there was something I didn't know. Something bigger. I started paying more attention to their conversations. I learned to move quietly through the house, to position myself where I could hear without being seen. I felt guilty about it, but the guilt was overwhelmed by a growing sense that something was very, very wrong. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I overheard another conversation. This time, my father was on the phone in the garage. I'd gone out to grab some tools to fix a loose drawer in my room and heard his voice through the thin walls. I understand the deadline, he was saying. But I need more time. I can get you the money, I just need another month. Silence while the other person spoke. I know what I owe. I'm not trying to skip out on it. Yes. Yes, I understand the interest is accumulating. I'm working on it. More silence. Longer this time. Gambling debts are still debts, I get it. But threatening me isn't going to make the money appear faster. I'm selling assets. I'm liquidating what I can. Just give me until Christmas. Please. Gambling debts. The words echoed in my mind. This wasn't just about living beyond their means. My father had a gambling problem. That's where the money had gone. That's why selling my bedroom for $15,000 actually mattered. It wasn't about the mortgage. It was about paying off whoever was on the other end of that phone call. I stood in the cold garage, holding a screwdriver I didn't need, feeling like my entire life had been revealed as a lie. My father, who'd always been so responsible, so careful. The man who taught me to balance a checkbook when I was 12. He'd gambled away enough money to put us in danger of losing our home. And they were going to fix it by selling my room. Thanksgiving was awkward. Melissa came with her husband, Derek, and spent the entire meal talking about their new condo downtown. She kept looking around the house with this proprietary expression, like she was already imagining what she'd change. At one point, she cornered me in the kitchen while I was getting more wine. "Your mom mentioned you might be moving out soon," she said, her tone dripping with false sympathy. I think that's so mature of you. It's time to spread your wings, you know? I smiled tightly. I haven't made any decisions yet. Well, when you do, I'd love to help you look for apartments. I know some great landlords. Places that are perfect for single girls on a budget. Single girls on a budget. I wanted to throw the wine in her face. Instead, I nodded and went back to the dining room. After Thanksgiving, the tension in the house grew thicker. My parents started having more whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered rooms. My mother couldn't quite meet my eyes. My father spent more time in the garage. I knew something was coming. I could feel it. December arrived with the first snow. The house looked beautiful, covered in white, like something from a Christmas card. My mother put up decorations, and my father strung lights along the gutters like he did every year. If you didn't know better, you'd think we were a normal, happy family preparing for the holidays. But I knew better. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. It happened on December 20th. 5 days before Christmas. I came home from work to find my parents sitting at the kitchen table, looking like they were about to deliver bad news. My mother had been crying. My father looked exhausted. "Emma," he said. "We need to talk." I sat down across from them, my heart pounding. This was it. This was when they'd tell me. I braced myself. "We've been having some financial difficulties," my father began, which was the understatement of the century. "Things we didn't want to burden you with. But the situation has become critical." "How critical?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "We might lose the house," my mother said, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "We've tried everything, Emma. We really have. But we're out of options." "What about my rent?" I asked. "I've been paying you $800 a month. That's almost $10,000 a year." "It helps," my father said. "But it's not enough. We need a significant amount of money very quickly, or we're going to be foreclosed on." I waited. Here it comes, I thought. Here's where they ask me to leave so they can sell my room. But they didn't. Instead, my father said, "We were wondering if you might be able to help us. Do you have any savings? Anything you could contribute?" I stared at them. They wanted my money. My savings that I'd been carefully building up, planning to use for a down payment on my own place someday. They wanted to take that too. "How much do you need?" I asked slowly. "Anything would help," my mother said. 10,000 would buy us some time. 20 would, $20,000? I couldn't keep the shock out of my voice. "You want me to give you $20,000? "Not give," my father said quickly. "We'd pay you back. With interest. This is just temporary, Emma. We just need to get through this rough patch." Rough patch. Like this was a small bump in the road instead of a crater of debt created by gambling and terrible financial decisions. "I need to think about it," I said, standing up. My hands were shaking. "This is a lot to process." "Of course," my mother said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "Take your time." "But Emma? Please don't mention this to anyone. We don't want the family to know how bad things have gotten." The family. She meant Melissa. They didn't want Melissa to know. Which meant they hadn't told her yet. Which meant the deal to sell my room was still on the table. I went to my room and closed the door. I sat on my bed, the same bed I'd had since I was 16, and looked around at the space that had been mine for as long as I could remember. And I realized something. They weren't going to tell me about selling the room. They were just going to do it. They were going to take my money if I gave it to them, and then they were going to sell my room anyway, and I'd be left with nothing. I needed proof. I needed to know for certain. That night, I did something I'm not proud of. I waited until my parents were asleep, then I snuck into my father's study. He kept his computer password on a post-it note stuck to the underside of his keyboard, a security risk I'd warned him about dozens of times. I logged into his email. And there it was. An entire chain of emails between my father and Melissa, dating back 6 weeks. Negotiations. Discussions of price. Melissa offering $15,000 for my room, plus another $3,000 for my grandmother's furniture. My father countering, trying to get $20,000. Melissa holding firm. Back and forth, like they were haggling over a used car. And then, dated December 18th, just 2 days ago, deal. $15,000, cash payment on Christmas Eve. Emma will be gone by New Year's. She doesn't know yet. I sat in the dark, reading that line over and over. She doesn't know yet. They were going to ambush me. On Christmas, they were going to tell me I had to leave. They were going to present it as a done deal, leave me no room to negotiate or fight back. They were going to take Melissa's money and throw me out of my own home, and they'd already planned the whole thing behind my back. I felt something crack open inside my chest. Not just anger, though there was plenty of that. But something deeper. A fundamental shift in how I understood my place in the world. My parents, the people who were supposed to protect me, were betraying me for money. For $15,000, they were willing to make me homeless. I printed the emails. All of them. I saved them to a flash drive. I logged out of the computer and went back to my room, and I sat there until sunrise, planning. If they were going to betray me, then I needed to protect myself. I needed leverage. I needed something that would stop them from throwing me out, something that would make them think twice. The next morning, I called in sick to work. Instead, I drove to the county records office. I'd learned a lot about property records in my job as a paralegal, and I knew exactly what I was looking for. I requested all documents related to my parents' house. The original deed, the mortgage documents, the second mortgage, any liens or judgments. I paid for copies of everything and sat in my car reading through them. And that's when I found it. The thing that changed everything. Hidden in the original deed, filed away 42 years ago when the house was first purchased, there was a provision. A clause that no one had ever mentioned. My grandmother, my mother's mother, had helped my parents buy the house. She'd contributed $70,000 toward the down payment, which in 1983 was a huge amount of money. And in exchange, the deed included a clause stating that upon my grandmother's death, her portion of the investment would pass to her direct descendants in the maternal line. My mother was an only child. Which meant when my grandmother died 6 years ago, her share of the house should have passed to my mother. But my mother was already an owner. Which meant, according to the legal language in the deed, it should have passed to the next generation of direct descendants in the maternal line. Me. I was my mother's only child. Which meant I owned a percentage of the house. I sat in my car, my hands trembling as I held the document. This changed everything. They couldn't sell my room. They couldn't throw me out. Because I was part owner of the property. But there was more. Attached to the deed was another document, one I almost missed. It was my grandmother's will, filed with the property records as required by the deed provision. I'd never seen my grandmother's will before. My mother had handled all the estate matters after she died, said everything was simple and straightforward. But according to this document, it wasn't simple at all. My grandmother had left me more than just her share of the house. She'd left me the entire house. The will stated clearly, I leave my full investment in the property located at 2847 Maple Street, including all appreciation and equity accumulated during my lifetime, to my granddaughter, Emma Catherine Morrison, to take effect immediately upon my death. I read it 3 times. Then 4. Then I drove to my office, even though I'd called in sick, and I showed the document to my boss, a lawyer named Patricia who specialized in estate law. She read it carefully, her expression getting more serious with each line. Finally, she looked up at me. "Emma," she said. "According to this, you don't own a percentage of your parents' house. You own the entire thing." My throat went dry. "What?" "Your grandmother's initial investment, plus the appreciation over 40 years, plus the equity built up. The way this is written, she owned at least 60% of the house by the time she died. Maybe more, depending on how much your parents paid down on the mortgage. And she left all of it to you. Not to your mother. To you. Directly. But no one ever told me. I never filed anything. I didn't even know this will existed." Patricia frowned. "Did your mother handle the estate?" "Yes. She said it was simple. Just some savings accounts and jewelry." "Did she file the will with the probate court?" I don't know. I assume so?" Patricia turned to her computer and started typing. After a few minutes, she shook her head. "There's no record of this will being filed with probate. Which means your mother either didn't know about it, or she deliberately hid it." The room spun. My mother had hidden my grandmother's will. She'd known I was supposed to inherit the house, and she'd kept it from me. For 6 years, I'd been living in a house that was legally mine, paying them rent, while they kept me in the dark. "What do I do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Patricia looked at me with something like pity. "That depends. What do you want to do?" What did I want? I wanted my family back. The one I thought I had, before I learned they were willing to sell me out. But that family didn't exist. Maybe it never had. "I want what's legally mine," I said. "And I want to make sure they can't do this to me." Patricia nodded. "Then we need to file this will with the probate court immediately. We'll need to petition to have it recognized, even though it's 6 years late. The fact that it was filed with the property records will help." "And Emma?" "Your parents won't take this well. You need to be prepared for that." I thought about my father's gambling debts. My mother's tears. The emails about selling my room. The plan to ambush me on Christmas. "I'm prepared," I said. Patricia filed the paperwork that afternoon. Because of the holidays, we couldn't get a court date until after the new year, but the filing itself was official. The will was now part of the public record. My claim to the house was documented. And I had 5 days until Christmas Eve, when my parents were planning to accept Melissa's money and tell me I had to leave. I went home that night with the papers in my bag. Part of me wanted to confront them immediately. To throw the will in their faces and demand answers. But I didn't. I had a better idea. I was going to let them think they'd won. I was going to let them believe their plan was working. And then, on Christmas Eve, when they thought they had me trapped, I was going to reveal the truth. It was petty, maybe. Definitely dramatic. But after everything they'd done, after all the lies and betrayal, I felt like I'd earned the right to a little drama. The next 3 days were some of the strangest of my life. My parents acted almost normal, like they weren't counting down to the moment they'd make me homeless. My mother baked Christmas cookies. My father watched football. We went through the motions of being a family, all while knowing that in a few days, everything would explode. On December 23rd, Melissa stopped by. She came bearing gifts, expensive candles and wine, playing the role of generous cousin. I watched her eyes dart to my bedroom door, calculating, planning. She stayed for an hour, chatting with my parents, laughing at my father's jokes. She didn't speak to me directly except to say, "Emma, you look tired. Are you taking care of yourself?" I smiled. "Just busy with work. You know how it is." She smiled back, and I saw the victory in her eyes. She thought she'd won. They all did. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what was coming. Part of me still couldn't believe it was real. My own parents. My own family. How had we gotten here? Christmas Eve dawned cold and clear. My mother made her traditional Christmas breakfast, cinnamon rolls and eggs and bacon. We ate at the kitchen table, and I watched my parents exchange glances. They were nervous. Planning their moment. Melissa arrived at noon with Derek. She was carrying a large envelope, the kind you'd use for important documents. My heart started pounding. This was it. We all sat in the living room. The Christmas tree sparkled in the corner, presents underneath that we all knew we weren't going to open in the spirit of joy and family. My mother poured wine. My father sat in his chair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. So, Melissa said, setting the envelope on the coffee table. I guess we should talk about the elephant in the room. My mother took a shaky breath. Emma, sweetheart. We need to tell you something. I looked at her, keeping my face neutral. Okay. My father leaned forward. We've made a business arrangement with Melissa. She's purchasing your bedroom to use as a home office when she visits. It's going to help us tremendously with our financial situation. I see, I said slowly. And when were you planning to tell me this? We're telling you now, my mother said. Emma, we need you to understand. We're desperate. We're going to lose the house if we don't do something drastic. So you're selling my room. We're selling one room, my father corrected. You can stay in the house. We can set up the guest room for you, or the basement. I almost laughed. You're literally selling my bedroom out from under me and offering me the basement as a consolation? Don't be dramatic, Melissa said, speaking up for the first time. It's not like you're being thrown out on the street. Your parents are being generous letting you stay at all. Something in me snapped. I stood up, and they all looked at me in surprise. Actually, I said. We need to talk about who's being generous. And who has the right to sell what. I pulled the papers from my bag. The will. The deed. All of it. I spread them out on the coffee table, right next to Melissa's envelope of cash. What is this? My mother asked, her face going pale. This, I said, is Grandma's will. The one you never told me about. The one that leaves me her entire investment in this house. Which, according to the deed and the property records, amounts to about 60% of the total value. The room went silent. My father reached for the papers, his hands shaking. He read the first page, then the second, then looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Where did you get this? My mother whispered. County Records Office. It was filed with the deed when Grandma made her initial investment. You remember that, don't you, Mom? When Grandma helped you buy this house? And you promised her that her investment would pass to her grandchildren? Emma, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. I understand that when Grandma died 6 years ago, you were supposed to file this will with probate. You were supposed to tell me about my inheritance. Instead, you hid it. You let me pay you rent to live in a house that was legally mine. And now you're trying to sell part of it to Melissa without my permission. Melissa stood up, looking between me and my parents. What is she talking about? You said you owned the house outright. We do, my father said, but his voice lacked conviction. This is it's a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, I said. I filed this will with the probate court 3 days ago. My lawyer is petitioning to have it recognized. Which means, very soon, this house is going to be legally mine. Not yours. Mine. My mother started crying. Real, desperate sobs. Emma, please. You don't know what you're doing. We need this money. Your father has debts, gambling debts, I said. I know, Mom. I know about all of it. The second mortgage. The credit cards. Dad's phone calls to whoever he owes money to. I know you're desperate. But that doesn't give you the right to steal from me. We weren't stealing, my father said, but he couldn't look me in the eye. We were trying to keep the family together. To keep us all safe. By selling my bedroom to Melissa? By planning to throw me out? We weren't going to throw you out, my mother insisted. We just needed, I read the emails, Mom. I saw Dad tell Melissa that I'd be gone by New Year's. She doesn't know yet. Remember writing that, Dad? My father's face crumpled. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered all the nights I'd lain awake in that bedroom, not knowing I was living in my own house, paying rent to people who had no right to collect it. Melissa grabbed her envelope and stood up. I'm not getting involved in this. Derek, we're leaving. Wait, my father said. Melissa, we had a deal, the deal's off, Melissa said coldly. I'm not buying a room in a house you might not even own. Figure out your family drama, Uncle Richard. But leave me out of it. She and Derek left, taking their $15,000 with them. The front door slammed, and the sound echoed through the house. My mother turned to me, her face twisted with anger and desperation. Are you happy now? You've destroyed everything. We're going to lose the house because of you. You were already losing the house, I said. This isn't about me. This is about Dad gambling away your life savings. This is about you two lying to me for 6 years about my inheritance. She was my mother said, her voice breaking. She left everything to you and nothing to me. Her own daughter. Do you know how that felt? And suddenly, I understood. My grandmother had left the house to me, not to my mother. And my mother, hurt and angry, had hidden the will. She'd convinced herself she deserved the inheritance more than I did. She'd rationalized it, buried it, pretended it didn't exist. I'm sorry Grandma hurt you, I said, and I meant it. But that doesn't make what you did right. You should have told me. We could have worked something out. But instead, you lied. And you were about to sell my room out from under me. So now we deal with the consequences. My father stood up. He looked defeated. Broken. What do you want, Emma? You want us to leave? You want the house? Fine. It's yours. We'll be out by New Year's. No, I said. The word came out harder than I'd intended. I don't want you to leave. I never wanted any of this. I just wanted my family to be honest with me. Then what? My mother asked. What do you want? I took a breath. I'd been thinking about this for days, and I knew what I had to do. I want you to get help, Dad. Real help. For the gambling. And I want you both to come clean about all of the debts. Everything. We're going to sit down with a financial advisor and figure out a real plan to deal with this. And the house, my father asked quietly. The house stays in my name. But you can keep living here. We'll work out a formal agreement. You'll pay me rent, a real fair market rent, and that money goes toward paying off your debts. And when those are paid, we'll talk about what happens next. My mother shook her head. You're going to make us pay rent to live in our own home? It's not your home, I said, and the words felt cruel but necessary. It's mine. Grandma made sure of that. But I'm willing to let you stay if you're willing to actually deal with your problems instead of running from them. We stood there in the living room, the Christmas tree lights blinking in the corner, presents unopened. A family fractured, possibly beyond repair. But at least we were finally being honest with each other. Over the next few days, the truth continued to unfold. My parents finally showed me all their debt, every credit card statement and collection notice. The total was staggering, over $90,000, not including the mortgages. My father had been betting on sports, on poker games, on anything he thought might be a quick fix. He'd been chasing losses for almost 5 years, and my mother had been helping him hide it. We met with a financial advisor in early January. The advisor laid out a plan: strict budgeting, selling my father's workshop equipment, my mother going back to work. And yes, paying me market rate rent for the house. The probate court recognized my grandmother's will in February. It was a surprisingly quick process, given how late we were filing. The judge seemed sympathetic to my situation, especially after Patricia explained how the will had been deliberately hidden. My parents were required to transfer the deed to my name and pay back 6 years of fair market rent, minus what I'd already paid them. It didn't cover everything they owed, but it helped. Melissa never spoke to me again. I heard through family gossip that she'd told everyone I was selfish and ungrateful, that I'd stolen my parents' house. Some relatives believed her. Some sided with me. Most just stayed out of it, probably grateful it wasn't their family drama to deal with. My parents and I reached a new normal, though it took time. My father started going to Gamblers Anonymous. He had relapses, moments where I could see the addiction calling to him, but he kept going to meetings. My mother got a job at a local library, something she'd always wanted to do but never had time for. They paid rent on time every month, though I could tell it hurt their pride. I moved into the master bedroom, the one my parents had slept in. It felt strange at first, like I was playing house in someone else's life. But gradually, it started to feel like mine. I repainted. I got new furniture. I turned my old bedroom into an office. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I did the right thing. If I should have just let them sell the room to Melissa, taken my savings and moved out, started fresh somewhere else. Let them keep their secrets and their lies. But then I remember standing in that living room on Christmas Eve, watching them try to betray me for money, and I know I made the right choice. Not just for me, but for them too. They needed someone to force them to face their problems. They needed to hit bottom before they could start climbing back up. A year after that terrible Christmas, we had a conversation. It was evening, and we were all in the living room. My father had just come back from a Gamblers Anonymous meeting. My mother was reading. I was on my laptop, working on some case files for work. "Emma," my father said suddenly. "I need to say something." I looked up. He looked older than he had a year ago, but also somehow lighter. Like he'd put down a weight he'd been carrying for too long. "I'm sorry," he said. "For all of it. For gambling. For lying. For trying to sell your room. For not being the father you deserved. I'm sorry." My mother set down her book. "I'm sorry too. I was angry at my own mother for leaving everything to you. I felt like she chose you over me. But that wasn't your fault. And I should have told you the truth from the beginning." I felt tears sting my eyes. "I'm sorry too. For the way I handled things. For not trying to talk to you first before going to a lawyer. No," my father interrupted. "You don't get to apologize. You did what you had to do. You protected yourself. That's what we should have taught you to do all along." We sat there in silence for a while, the three of us, in the house that was now mine but still felt like ours in some complicated way. "Are we going to be okay?" my mother asked quietly. "I think so," I said. "Eventually." And I meant it. We weren't fixed. We probably never would be completely. But we were honest now. And that was a start. 2 years after that Christmas Eve, I met someone. His name was Alex, and he was a lawyer at a different firm, and he made me laugh in a way I'd forgotten was possible. When I told him the story of how I ended up owning my family's house, he didn't judge. He just said, "Sounds like you did what you had to do." We dated for a year before he moved in. My parents had moved out by then, into a smaller apartment they could actually afford now that most of their debt was paid off. We'd sold the house together, split the profits according to the original deed percentages. My grandmother had been right to structure it the way she did. It protected me, even from beyond the grave. With my share of the sale, I put a down payment on a small condo. Alex and I fixed it up together, painted the walls, hung pictures. It was ours in a way my childhood home had never really been. No hidden debts. No secret wills. Just two people building something honest. My parents came to visit sometimes. Things were still awkward, but getting better. My father had been sober from gambling for 2 years. My mother had gotten a promotion at the library. They'd learned to live within their means, to be honest with each other, to face problems instead of running from them. And me? I learned that family isn't about blind loyalty. It's not about sacrificing yourself for people who won't do the same for you. Real family means honesty, even when it hurts. It means holding people accountable, even when you love them. I think about my grandmother sometimes. The grandmother I barely got to know as an adult. I wonder if she knew what would happen when she structured her will that way. If she saw something in my mother, some weakness or tendency toward dishonesty, that made her want to protect me specifically. Or maybe she just believed in preparing the next generation, giving them a foundation to build on. I'll never know. But I'm grateful. 3 years after that Christmas Eve, I got a call from Melissa. I almost didn't answer. We hadn't spoken since she'd walked out with her envelope of cash, and I'd been fine with that. But something made me pick up. Emma? Her voice was different. Smaller somehow. Less confident. Melissa. This is unexpected. I know. I'm sorry to bother you. I wanted to apologize. For that whole situation with your parents. I should have known something was wrong. I should have asked more questions instead of just jumping at the chance to buy your room. I sat down on my couch, surprised. Why are you calling me now? It's been 3 years. Derek left me, she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. He was having an affair with his business partner. He cleaned out our accounts and filed for divorce. And suddenly I'm living in my parents' basement at 31 years old, and I realized I'm exactly where you were. Except you fought back. You stood up for yourself. And I just let it happen. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated. Part of me just felt sad for her. I'm sorry that happened to you, I said finally. That's awful. I was so jealous of you, Melissa continued. Growing up, you had this family that seemed so normal. So stable. My parents were always working, always busy. You had dinners together and movie nights and all this time with your mom and dad. And I hated that you didn't even seem to appreciate it. I did appreciate it, I said quietly. But it wasn't what it looked like from the outside. Nothing ever is. I know that now. Emma, I really am sorry. For trying to buy your room. For all the years of being a terrible cousin. For everything. I appreciate that, I said. And I meant it. Are you okay? Do you need anything? No, I'm figuring it out. Getting a lawyer. Finding a job. The same things you did, I guess. We talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. I never expected to hear from Melissa again, and I didn't. But that phone call changed something in me. Made me realize that everyone's fighting battles you can't see. Even the people who seem to have everything figured out. 5 years after that Christmas Eve, my mother got sick. Cancer. It was aggressive, and the treatment was brutal. She and my father had health insurance, but the copays and expenses added up fast. They were back in debt again, though this time through no fault of their own. Alex and I talked about it. We'd been married for a year by then, and money was tight for us too. We were saving for a house with a yard, maybe room for kids someday. But she was my mother. And despite everything, I still loved her. We helped. Not with everything, we couldn't afford that. But with what we could. We paid for a few months of her medications when insurance denied coverage. We drove her to appointments when my father couldn't get off work. We sat with her during chemo treatments, holding her hand while poison dripped into her veins, trying to kill the cancer faster than it killed her. During one of those treatments, while my father was in the cafeteria getting coffee, my mother turned to me. "I never thanked you," she said. Her voice was weak, ravaged by the treatment. "For what?" "For saving us. That Christmas. I know it didn't feel like saving at the time. But if you hadn't forced us to face our problems, if you'd let us keep running, I don't think we'd have survived. Not as a family. Maybe not at all." I squeezed her hand. "You don't have to thank me." "I do. Emma, I was so angry at my mother for choosing you. For trusting you with the house instead of trusting me. But she was right. She knew I wasn't strong enough. She knew you were." "Mom, let me finish. Please." She took a shaky breath. "You were stronger than all of us. You stood up to your own parents when we betrayed you. You held us accountable. You made us face the consequences of our choices. And then, when you could have walked away forever, you gave us another chance. That took more strength than I've ever had." I was crying now, tears sliding down my face in the sterile chemotherapy room. "I'm proud of you," my mother said. I should have said that years ago. But I'm saying it now. I'm so proud of the woman you've become. She survived the cancer. Barely. The treatment almost killed her, but she fought through it. When she came out the other side, thinner and weaker but alive, she was different. Softer. More honest. Like she'd looked death in the face and decided she didn't want to waste whatever time she had left on lies and pride. My father changed too. Seeing my mother that sick, that close to dying, it broke something in him. He stopped going to Gamblers Anonymous because he didn't need it anymore. The addiction just left. Like it had been a symptom of something else, some deeper pain, and watching my mother fight for her life had cured him of it. 7 years after that Christmas Eve, Alex and I had a baby. A girl. We named her Catherine, after my grandmother. My parents came to the hospital to meet her, and my father cried when he held her. Real tears of joy, not shame or regret. "She's perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect." My mother touched the baby's tiny hand. "She looks like you did. When you were born." "She looks like Grandma," I said, seeing it suddenly. The shape of her eyes. The curve of her mouth. "She looks like Catherine." "Yes," my mother agreed. "She does." We took them all home, Alex, the baby, my parents. We ordered pizza and sat in our small living room, and my father told stories about when I was born, how scared he'd been, how sure he was that he'd somehow break me because I was so small and fragile. "And look at you now," he said, watching me hold my daughter. "You're the strongest person I know." "I learned from watching you guys fail," I said, then immediately regretted it. Too harsh. Too honest. But my mother just laughed. Actually laughed. "You're not wrong. We were terrible role models in a lot of ways. But you kept trying," Alex said, speaking up for the first time. "That counts for something. You made mistakes, but you owned them eventually. You did the work to fix things. That's more than a lot of people do." My father nodded slowly. "We didn't have a choice. Emma didn't give us one." "Good," Alex said. "She shouldn't have." We sat there together, 3 generations in that small room. My parents, who'd betrayed me and then learned to be better. My husband, who'd loved me despite my complicated family. My daughter, who'd never know the pain of that terrible Christmas unless I chose to tell her someday. And me. The girl who'd been betrayed, who'd fought back, who'd demanded better and refused to settle for less. 10 years after that Christmas Eve, I stood in front of my parents' apartment building. They'd called me that morning, asked me to come over. Said they had something to show me. I climbed the stairs to their second-floor unit, knocked on the door. My father answered, looking nervous and excited in equal measure. Come in, he said, ushering me inside. My mother was at the kitchen table, papers spread out in front of her. She looked up when I entered, smiling. We did something, she said. And we wanted you to see before we made it official. I sat down across from her, looked at the papers. It took me a moment to understand what I was seeing. Then it clicked. It was a will. Their will. And according to the document in front of me, they were leaving everything to Catherine. Not to me. To my daughter. I don't understand, I said. We don't have much, my father explained. This apartment is rented. We have some savings now, maybe $40,000 if we're lucky. A few investments. Nothing like what your grandmother left. But what we do have, we want it to go to Catherine. Why not me? I asked, though I wasn't offended. Just confused. My mother reached across the table and took my hand. Because you don't need it. You've built your own life. You're strong and capable and you'll be fine without anything from us. But Catherine, we want to give her what we couldn't give you. A foundation. Security. Something to build on. And we wanted to do it right this time, my father added. No secrets. No hiding it. We're filing this with our lawyer today. We wanted you to know about it, to approve it, before we made it official. I looked at the papers, then at my parents. They were older now, grayer. My father's hands trembled slightly, early Parkinson's, the doctors thought. My mother was still thin from the cancer, probably always would be. They weren't perfect. They'd made terrible mistakes. They'd hurt me in ways that still ached sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep. But they'd tried. God, they'd really tried to be better. I think Grandma would approve, I said finally. She'd like knowing you learned from her. My mother's eyes filled with tears. I hope so. I hope she'd be proud of us. Of all of us. She would be, I said. And I believed it. 15 years after that Christmas Eve, I sat at my kitchen table with Catherine. She was 15 now, all teenage attitude and rolling eyes and fierce independence. She reminded me of myself at that age, so sure she knew everything, so certain the world made sense. Mom, she said, looking up from her homework. Grandpa told me a story today. About how you sued them for the house when you were 24. My heart skipped. We'd never told her the full story. She knew her grandparents had had money problems once upon a time. She knew I owned the house we'd eventually sold. But we'd never gone into detail about that Christmas Eve. Sued is a strong word, I said carefully. I filed paperwork to claim an inheritance. But yes. Essentially. Why? Such a simple question. Such a complicated answer. Because they lied to me, I said. And they were going to do something that would have hurt me very badly. And I had to protect myself. But they're your parents. Aren't you supposed to trust your parents? Usually, yes. But Catherine, sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us don't. Sometimes they make mistakes. Sometimes they're dealing with their own problems and they hurt us without meaning to. Or sometimes they hurt us because they think it's the only option they have. She frowned, processing this. Are you glad you did it? Filed the paperwork? I thought about it. Really thought about it. About the years of awkwardness and rebuilding trust. About my mother's cancer and my father's recovery. About holding my baby girl and watching my parents hold her too, all of us crying. About this moment, right now, having this conversation. Yes, I said. I'm glad. Because it forced all of us to be honest. It forced us to deal with our problems instead of hiding from them. Was it easy? No. Did it hurt? Absolutely. But it was the right thing to do. Even though it made everyone mad? Even though. Catherine, listen to me. Sometimes doing the right thing means people get angry with you. Sometimes it means standing alone. Sometimes it means your own family turns against you. But you have to do it anyway. Because your integrity, your sense of self, your ability to look in the mirror and know you did the right thing, that's worth more than keeping the peace. She nodded slowly. Grandpa cried when he told me. He said he's still sorry. That he'll always be sorry. I know. And I've forgiven him. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending it never happened. It means acknowledging the hurt, the betrayal, and choosing to move forward anyway. That sounds hard. It is. It's one of the hardest things you can do. But Catherine, you're strong enough to do hard things. You come from a long line of strong women. Your great-grandmother Catherine knew how to protect the people she loved. And when the time comes, you'll know how to. She went back to her homework, but I could tell she was thinking about it. Processing. Trying to understand how the world could be so complicated. That night, after she'd gone to bed, Alex found me standing at the window, looking out at the street. Thinking about that Christmas, he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. How did you know? You get this look. Like you're somewhere else. Somewhere hard. I leaned back against him. Catherine asked about it. About what I did. What did you tell her? The truth. That sometimes you have to stand up to the people you love. That doing the right thing isn't always the easy thing. Do you still think it was right? Even after all these years? I turned to face him. Do you think it was? I think, he said slowly, that you did what you needed to do to survive. And I think your parents needed someone to force them to be better. So yes. I think it was right. Hard, but right. I destroyed Christmas, I said, and suddenly I was crying. Where had that come from? Why now, after all these years? No, Alex said firmly, pulling me close. They destroyed Christmas. Long before you found that will. They destroyed it the moment they decided to lie to you, to sell your room, to put their problems ahead of your safety. You just refused to pretend everything was fine. I miss the way things were before, I whispered. When I thought they'd never hurt me. When I trusted them completely. I know. But Emma, that version of them wasn't real. It was a facade. The people they are now, with all their flaws and mistakes out in the open, those are your real parents. And you have a real relationship with them now. Honest. Complicated. But real. He was right. I knew he was right. But some part of me would always mourn the illusion of the perfect family I'd believed in before that terrible Christmas Eve. 20 years after that Christmas Eve, my father died. Heart attack. Quick and relatively painless, the doctors said. He was 72. He'd lived long enough to see Catherine graduate high school, to walk her through his workshop at his new place and show her how to use tools, to tell her stories about me as a child. At his funeral, I gave the eulogy. I talked about his love of woodworking, his terrible jokes, the way he'd taught me to ride a bike and to change a tire and to stand up for myself. I didn't mention the gambling. I didn't mention that Christmas Eve. Some things didn't need to be part of the public record. But afterward, at the reception, Melissa approached me. She was older now too, remarried to a kind man who taught high school science. She'd rebuilt her life after her divorce, become a therapist specializing in financial trauma. That was a beautiful eulogy, she said. Very generous, considering. Considering what? Considering what he did to you. What they both did. I looked at her carefully. He was my father. He made mistakes. But he also gave me life, raised me, taught me things. The good doesn't erase the bad, but the bad doesn't erase the good either. That's very mature of you. No, I said. It's just honest. That's all any of us can be. Honest about the complexity of loving people who hurt us. She nodded. I tell my clients that sometimes. About you. About how you stood up to your parents when they tried to take advantage of you, but you didn't abandon them either. How you held them accountable but also gave them a chance to be better. It's a good model for dealing with family financial abuse. I'm a case study? I asked, not sure how I felt about that. An anonymous one. But yes. You should be proud of how you handled it. I don't feel proud, I admitted. I just feel tired. It's been 20 years and I'm still processing it all. That's normal. Betrayal trauma doesn't just disappear. But Emma, you survived it. And you helped them survive it too. That counts for something. My mother lived 3 more years after my father died. She moved into an assisted living facility, her body worn down by age and the lingering effects of cancer. Catherine and I visited her every week, bringing flowers and books and news of the outside world. One afternoon, about a month before she died, my mother asked Catherine to leave us alone for a bit. Catherine went to get coffee, and my mother turned to me. I need to tell you something, she said. Her voice was weak now, barely above a whisper. About your grandmother. About why she left the house to you. Mom, you don't have to, I do. Before I die, I need you to know. Your grandmother, she saw something in me. Something weak. I was her only child, and she loved me, but she didn't trust me. She knew I'd squander it somehow, waste it. And she was right. You didn't waste anything. You lived in that house for years. You raised me there. But I would have lost it, my mother insisted. If she'd left it to me directly, I would have taken out more mortgages, more loans. I would have spent it all trying to make your father happy, trying to fix his problems. She knew that. So she protected you from me. From us. Tears rolled down her weathered cheeks. I was so angry at her for that. So hurt. My own mother didn't trust me. But she was right, Emma. She was right to leave it to you. You were always stronger than me. I was strong because you raised me to be, I said. You and Dad, despite your mistakes, you taught me to stand up for myself. To not let people take advantage of me. Even when those people were you. She laughed, which turned into a cough. When she recovered, she said, we taught you that by being terrible examples, you mean. Sometimes that's the best teacher. Knowing what not to do. I love you, she said. I know I didn't always show it. I know I hurt you. But I love you, Emma. I always have. I know, Mom. I love you too. She died in her sleep 4 weeks later. Peaceful. No pain. At her funeral, I stood up and told the truth. Not all of it, but enough. I talked about her flaws and her strengths. Her mistakes and her growth. The woman she'd been and the woman she'd become. My mother wasn't perfect, I said to the gathered mourners. She made serious mistakes that hurt the people she loved. But she owned those mistakes. She did the hard work of becoming better. And in the end, that's all any of us can do. Make mistakes, learn from them, and try to be better tomorrow than we were today. After the funeral, after everyone had left, I stood alone in the cemetery. 2 graves now. My father and my mother, side by side. I thought about that Christmas Eve 23 years ago. How young I'd been. How sure I was that my world was ending. But it hadn't ended. It had just changed. Transformed into something different, something more honest, something harder but ultimately stronger. I thought about my grandmother Catherine, who'd had the wisdom to protect me before I even knew I needed protecting. I thought about my parents, flawed and struggling and ultimately trying their best. I thought about Alex and Catherine, the family I'd built for myself, different from the one I'd been born into but no less real. And I thought about that girl of 24, standing in her childhood bedroom, learning for the first time that the people you love can betray you. I wished I could go back and tell her that it would be okay. That the pain would fade. That she'd survive this and come out stronger. But maybe she already knew. Maybe that's why she fought so hard. Why she demanded better. Why she refused to accept betrayal as the price of family. I like to think my grandmother would be proud of that girl. Of the woman she became. Of the way she protected herself without destroying the people who hurt her. Of the way she held them accountable but also gave them space to grow. 25 years after that Christmas Eve, Catherine got married. She'd become a lawyer, like I'd been. Specialized in estate law, actually. She said she'd been inspired by my story, by the way one hidden will had changed everything. At her wedding reception, she asked me to dance. As we swayed to the music, she said, "Thank you for telling me the truth. About Grandma and Grandpa. About what happened. It wasn't an easy story to tell. No. But it was important. It taught me that family is complicated. That love and hurt can exist in the same space. That you can forgive people without forgetting what they did. You sound like a wise old woman." She laughed. "I sound like my mother." "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you regret it? Any of it? Filing that will, fighting back, all of it?" I thought about it. Really, deeply thought about it. "No," I said finally. "I don't regret it. It was hard. It hurt. It changed everything. But it also forced all of us to be real with each other. To deal with our problems honestly. And ultimately, that made us stronger. Not just me. All of us. Even Grandma and Grandpa? Especially them. Catherine, they were drowning in lies and debt and shame. What I did, it threw them a lifeline. They didn't see it that way at first. But eventually, they grabbed on. They did the work to save themselves. And that's the most important thing. I hope I'm as strong as you if I ever have to do something like that." "You're already stronger," I assured her. "Because you've learned from watching me. You won't have to make the same mistakes. You can make brand new ones instead." She laughed, and we kept dancing. Now, sitting here at my kitchen table, I'm 60 years old. Catherine is 35 with 2 children of her own. Alex is retired, his hair white, his hands gentle when they touch mine. I'm a grandmother now. The matriarch of this complicated, messy, beautiful family. Sometimes my grandchildren ask about the house. The one I inherited from my grandmother. The one that caused so much chaos. I tell them the story, simplified for young ears. I tell them about a woman who wanted to protect her granddaughter. About parents who made mistakes. About a young woman who stood up for herself. I tell them that family is complicated. That love isn't always easy. That sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who hurt us deepest. But also that people can change. That accountability and honesty can heal even the deepest wounds. That forgiveness is possible without forgetting. And I tell them about that Christmas Eve, 25 years ago now, when everything fell apart and rebuilt itself into something new. I don't tell them about the nights I still wake up from dreams where I'm 24 again, discovering that my parents have betrayed me. I don't tell them about the complicated grief I felt when they died, mourning not just who they were but who I'd once thought they were. I don't tell them that even now, all these years later, part of me still wishes I'd never found that will. That I could have stayed in ignorant bliss, believing my parents would never hurt me, living in a comfortable lie. But then I look at my life. At Alex, who loves me for my strength, not despite it. At Catherine, who learned to protect herself by watching me fight. At my grandchildren, who are growing up in a family that values honesty over comfort. And I know I made the right choice. On Christmas Eve, I sometimes think about that girl standing in her bedroom, watching her cousin measure the walls. I think about the fear and betrayal she felt. The way her world cracked open. The decision she made to fight instead of flee. And I'm grateful to her. For being brave when it would have been easier to be weak. For demanding better when it would have been simpler to accept less. For understanding that sometimes love means holding people accountable, even, especially, when those people are family. That Christmas Eve changed everything. It destroyed the family I thought I had and forced us to build something new. Something honest. Something real. And in the end, that was the greatest gift my grandmother could have given me. Not the house itself, but the catalyst for truth. The thing that made us all face ourselves and each other without illusions. So when my grandchildren ask if I'm sad about what happened, I tell them no. I'm not sad. I'm grateful. Because that terrible Christmas Eve, that moment of ultimate betrayal, it taught me the most important lesson of my life, that you can survive anything as long as you refuse to lie about it. As long as you face the truth, no matter how painful, and demand that the people around you do the same. And maybe that's what family is supposed to be. Not perfect people who never hurt each other. But imperfect people who hurt each other and then do the hard work of healing. Who fail and try again. Who betray and earn back trust. Who tear down and rebuild. My name is Emma. And this is my story. The story of how I learned that sometimes the people you love most will betray you for money. But also that betrayal doesn't have to be the end. It can be a beginning. A painful, terrible, necessary beginning. And 25 years later, looking at the family we've built from the ashes of that Christmas Eve, I can finally say, it was worth it. Every hard conversation, every tear, every moment of doubt. All of it. Because what we have now is real. Messy and complicated and sometimes still painful. But real. And that's worth everything.